Hello, everyone. This is Professor DePaulo. Welcome you back to Site 265 Online. And today we're going to be talking about how to write the method section. So, many of you struggled with the introduction section, which I think is kind of the hardest part of the paper, although the discussion section is also a little difficult to write. But the introduction is a little bit more work. Um, and obviously, I didn't expect a perfect introduction section, and you will get feedback for that and be allowed to rewrite it, of course. However, this week we're going to do a really, really easy part of the paper, part of the manuscript, and this is the method section. Now, for our study, it's very easy. If you ran a more complex study that involved running like an experiment in a lab with a different apparatus, it would be much more complex because you'd have to detail exactly what was done step by step, and you have to detail all the different devices that you use and provide lots of information on that. Since we're only using a survey, online survey, there's really not much to write in the method section. So this is something that you can write in like 10 or 15 minutes. So first log into your Blackboard page, then go to assignments, and you'll see something says writing the method section, and you'll see the method place to submit the method section here. So this is the due date here, 6/16 at 11:59 p.m. And so let's look at how to write the method section first. So this is the PDF about writing the method section. As you can see, there's not much here. So what do you have to do here? So you start with the word method, 12-point font, regular text, 12-point font. Um, Center it. So with not italics, not bold, just centered like that, method. And then after that, you're going to space, leave a couple spaces, and then flush left, you're going to write participants in italics. So the word participants has to be in italics. And then right below that, you're going to then write about the participants. So you leave participants in italics on its own line. Hit enter, start the line below that, and then start writing about the participants. Well, this is one or two sentences describing the total number of participants, the number of males, females, non-binary participants, and the age range and where they were recruited from. So this is the only data you need for participants. How do you find this data? I've provided you all the information. I provided you a tabulation of all the data, not the raw data, but just a summarized form of the data. And you can find that under course information. If you run down here under syllabus, you have tabulated data COVID vaccination study. And this is all the raw data that's kind of grouped together. So it gives you numbers and percentages. This is not for analyzing the data because I have a file for that that's separate than this. And I will analyze the data for you, so you don't have to worry about that. All you have to do here is look for the relevant data you need in the method section. So if I open up this tabulated data PDF, I have redacted all identifiable information. So everything's been blacked out that can link anybody's names to their responses. So you can't even find people's names or emails in this tabulated form that I'm giving you. This is basically the survey results. These are the questions basically for each section. So you see section HIA, that's health anxiety. Section GAD7, that's basically generalized anxiety. You see section PHQ9, this is depression. Section PHQ15, this is somatization. Section ECRR, this is attachment style. Section TES, this is empathy. The section Big Five, this is the Big Five, right? So this is ocean. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So it's measuring those Big Five traits. This is a section on mask wearing. These are questions revolving around mask wearing and also political issues that I threw in there. And this is a section on the vaccine. So Did you get the vaccine? Are you looking for the vaccine? How effective is it? What are the side effects? Are you worried about it? All that stuff. So these are questions that I basically wrote myself for you. And you see the total number of respondents is 23. This is the dates of responding. So 23 out of 31 people in the class. I don't know why 8 people did not complete the survey, but you didn't, so it's too late now. But for the 23 people who did complete it, thank you for that. I've redacted all names and all emails, so you don't know who took the survey at all, or their contact information, or their ID numbers. It's all redacted. What you do need to know here is gender. So out of the 23 total participants, we had 20 females, 2 males, and 1 non-binary participant. And in terms of race, ethnicity, 14 participants were identified as African American, 7 identified as Hispanic Latino, and 2 identified as white. So that totals 23. And the ages, here are all the ages of the participants, all the 23 participants. So you see a low age of 19 and a high age of 37. So the age range is 19 to 37 here. And you can't link any of the responses. This is all anonymous. Now, that's all you need for the method section. You have the age range, you have the total participants, the breakdown by gender, and the breakdown by race ethnicity. And that's what you want to write in those 2 sentences in the first part of the method section under participants. So where it says 1 or 2 sentences describing the number of total participants, you have that, number of males, females, non-binaries, and age range. And where they were recruited from, well, they were recruited from, obviously, a behavioral research class at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. So that's participants. Can't really screw that one up, right? If you're watching along with the video, you have it. You just have to put it on paper. So I don't expect any problems here. Then the next section is materials. Put that word materials in italics. Once again, leave materials on its own line. So put a space and then start right below materials. Should be flush left, right? So these subheadings are always to the left margin, and the word method is obviously centered in the middle of the paper. And so the method is 1 or 2 sentences describing the materials used in the study. Well, all you have to do is talk about an online survey was completed that measured empathy. You don't even have to write even at what it measured. I mean, you could just put an online survey is completed. That was fine. And then it took approximately a half hour to complete. So for materials, you can write an online survey was completed that took approximately 1/2 hour to finish. There's nothing really to put. You really don't have anything additional to put there because I could tell you where the survey was given, what type of software was used. It was Survey Gold that I used to design the survey, but that's not really that important. There's a million different survey generators. There's Survey Gold, which is something I've used for a few years. There's Qualtrics, which I also use. They're all good, pretty much. I mean, people use SurveyMonkey. But SurveyMonkey tends to be expensive, and I'm not a huge fan of SurveyMonkey. I mean, some people like it. So there's a whole variety of different survey softwares. If you want to write that the survey was conducted in, using the Survey Gold platform, you can write that. It's not that important, but if you want to write that, you can write that. So for materials, you just want to write that an online survey was completed, that it took approximately 30 minutes. And if you want to write that Survey Gold was the platform used, you can write that too. It's optional. And that's it. And the procedure, what happened during the study, you just want to write once again, an online survey was used. and you want to write what was measured in the study here. So under procedure, you can write what was measured. An online survey that measured empathy, mask wearing, vaccination status, health anxiety, generalized anxiety, depression, somatization. You could write all of that stuff down if you want. But just give several of the variables. The variables that are important to write here under the procedure section subsection are the variables you tested in the hypotheses. So if you go back to the hypotheses from the introduction, we looked at empathy, we looked at mask wearing, we looked at vaccination status, we looked at health anxiety, fear of future pandemics, we looked at family and friends lost during COVID, and depression and generalized anxiety. And we're looking at attachment anxiety and vaccination, desire for vaccination. So you can list these variables here under the procedure one. You could say that the survey measured what's in these hypotheses. You don't have to list every single variable that I'm giving you because there's a lot of variables that I gave in the survey that I am not measuring or that I'm not testing the hypotheses for because I want this to be a relatively simple experience for you. I don't want to overwhelm you with like tons and tons of things. So I've kept it to these 5 hypotheses and we'll see what happens. Now, I personally may test other hypotheses based on the data that we've collected. So I may use this data and look for patterns and look for stuff for the future that I personally could use in my research. So this project is important for you to learn the basics of research and how to write up a manuscript, but it's also something that's interesting for me because I get to look at data in real time and I get to maybe think about what I'm going to plan for a real research study going forward in the future, next semester or even later in the summer, where I may want to do some data collection online revolving around vaccines because I think this is a very important issue and it's timely and it's like the most important issue in our society today. It's also well funded because everyone's doing research on it. The government is throwing money at COVID research because we need it. We can't have something like this happen again. So, is there any sort of thing we can discover running this kind of research that would prevent a pandemic from happening in the future? That we can maybe, I'm not saying it's not a panacea. It's not the sort of the cure all for all the problems with COVID, or a pandemic happening in the future. But it's something that if we have a future pandemic, can we learn something from this in terms of the psychology of people that are complying versus not complying? And can we develop an intervention to get people to comply in the future? So what is causing people to not be vaccinated? Is it fear of side effects? Is it fear of the government controlling them? Is it they don't like people to tell them what to do? They want their independence, their liberty. They want, free will. That there are people like that. They feel the government is intruding into their lives too much, and that's a libertarian position, and that's perfectly acceptable position. I mean, there's plenty of different positions people take politically and from an ethics point of view about, do I trust the government? Do I not trust the government? That's why I ask questions about the government too. Do I trust the research? Is it too fast? Was it, do we not know? Is it scary? Are you afraid of it? You're afraid of side effects. I mean, these are all really interesting questions moving forward. So if something like this happens again, which I hope not, but the experts, whoever they are, seem to think that something like this is going to happen again in the future, we'll have an idea. Can we learn from this? Is the United States more vulnerable to these kind of issues versus a country that's had serious pandemics and kind of got in line with them, such as, say, South Korea, where they had the SARS and they were able to, adopt a more effective strategy to contain the virus when they had the COVID this time around. So it's a lot of interesting questions from a research point of view, from a political point of view, from a government point of view. There's not many answers right now, but could there be answers that help in the future? And that's kind of my mindset with COVID and studying it. So you can list these variables. Once again, go back to the procedure. All you have to do is say that an online study was completed that looked at empathy, mask wearing, anxiety, depression, COVID-related illness, uh, COVID deaths in family, in family and friends, and list some of these variables that I just talked about, that are talked about in the introduction. These variables. You don't have to list every variable because that's too many variables to list. But these main ones that are talked about in the hypotheses are good ones to list. This is a really basic thing. There should be no serious problems with this part of the manuscript because there's not much to really talk about here. This is not like the introduction where it requires you to synthesize, multiple research articles, and this is kind of a different thing for some students, uh, and it's difficult to write the introduction. The discussion is going to be a little, also difficult to write. But this is kind of the gimme part of the paper. This is you should be able to get 10 out of 10 on the rough draft and really not have to change much for the final copy, final paper, because there's not much here. There's not much to screw up here. So if you have questions, reach out to me. Let me know what's going on. If you want to meet my office hours and stuff, send me an email. I'm available, but try to send me an email at least a day before so that I'm not in with many other people, so I can make time for you. So if you need a question, send me an email. I can set up an office hours. I respond to my emails pretty quickly usually, and I don't see this being a problem. Save it as a PDF, upload it to Blackboard. So if you go to assignments, that's where all the uploads take place. Upload it where it says method, upload it here as a PDF, and you're done. I'll give you feedback if you require feedback. If you've written it correctly, there'll probably be no feedback. I'll just say, this is fine, and give you the grade, and then you move on. There'll be a lot more feedback for the introduction, because there's a lot that needs to be kind of altered and shaped, and it's a more difficult assignment. So the method should be really not difficult. But like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I want you to learn the basics ideas of the research paper. And a lot of students say, well, it's hard. Yeah, the course is hard. I mean, difficult. You want to say it's difficult? It could be difficult. It's a different type of course. It's a different type of writing. It's a scientific writing. It's an analytical mindset. It's not just kind of like, you know, writing like a blog or writing some basic summary in another class. This is a more direct kind of give me, all the evidence and cut out all the extraneous stuff. And that's a new way of writing for a lot of students. So yeah, it's a difficult class, and I agree with students emailing me this week saying, "Wow, this is hard. I don't know where to go with this." Well, yeah, I mean it's kind of what everybody experiences. And then they write it, and they get feedback, and they learn from the feedback, and they write a better final paper. They revise it, they write a better final paper. And even after the course is over, you're not going to be an expert on writing a manuscript. Even after graduate school, you're not an expert on writing manuscripts. This is the idea of writing a manuscript is extremely, extremely difficult task. It's a career in research, and when you first start out, you're not going to write very well. Coming out of grad school, my dissertation was not like a masterpiece by any means. I write a lot better now than I did when I wrote my dissertation. That was after 5+ years of graduate school. As an undergraduate, forget it. So I'm not looking for a masterpiece. I'm looking for you to understand the basics of writing the manuscript and to learn from your mistakes and to follow instructions. That's important. Follow the directions look at my comments, my feedback, and then incorporate my feedback into the revisions. That's the big step of the course. Not to ignore my comments, not to ignore the directions, and just do what you want. If you can do all that stuff, follow the directions, incorporate my comments, and write a better revised paper, you're going to be fine. It's going to be difficult. And even if you get out of the class, even if you got an A in the class, it's not like you're an expert on writing a manuscript. You're an undergraduate psychology student, or you may aspire to go to grad school, and I encourage that. But even a grad student, even a PhD student that graduates is not going to write a perfect manuscript. I do not write perfect manuscripts. I write manuscripts that get killed all the time by reviewers, and they give me pages and pages of negative feedback, constructive criticism. They're not always that nice. They don't like a lot of things that I write. And then I have to make changes. And then I send it back for another round of revisions. Sometimes you go through revisions, 2 or 3 times with the reviewers before the editor accepts your paper for publication. So there's a lot of trial and error involved in writing these kinds of, this kind of format of a paper. And it's not something you pick up overnight. So what I want you to do is try to follow the instructions, do your best, and if you do all that, you'll be fine. If you have questions, reach out to me. And if you can reach out to me before 11:55 p.m. of the day that it's due, that's even better because then I can actually write back to you and you can look at my feedback, my answers to your questions. If you're writing to me at 11:59 p.m. or 11:55 p.m. and saying, I've been trying this and I can't figure it out and it's due in 4 minutes, it puts me in a tough spot, right? Puts you in a tough spot. So moving forward, I think if you could start the assignment maybe a day ahead of time or so, I think that's, give me a chance to respond to you if you have a question. So, well, that's about it for this week's assignment. Hopefully that's helpful. And hopefully this little discussion that I'm giving right now is helpful to keep you in a positive mindset moving forward and not be overly stressed and sort of feeling under the pressure that the course is too hard, because it is a hard course. It's a difficult course, but it's doable. You just have to work at it. If you work at it, you'll be fine. So that's it for this week. Bye for now, and I'll see you online soon.